Former communist Romanian politician Silviu Brucan claimed in an interview with French newspaper Le Figaro in 1990 that it would take Romanians 20 years to truly adopt democracy. However, he did not say how long it would take them to actually do something useful with it once they adopted it. Every general election in almost any country will be claimed to be historical by someone, but the presidential elections happening in Romania right now really are historic. More than 35 years after the fall of communism, the political elite that has been, sadly, just a seamless extension of the former Communist Party has finally run out of steam. We've finally reached an inflection point where the credibility of the post-communist political mainstream has started to collapse. In November 2024, the first round of presidential elections handed a devastating defeat to the mainstream parties, sending two anti-system candidates to the second round. Russian meddling definitely added a bit of drama, but even without the Russian meddling, the fundamental result would have been the same. Just to prove it, last week the first round was redone, minus the Russian meddling, and the result was the same. Again, two anti-system candidates were sent to the second round, George Simion and Nicu Șordan. The general feeling in the media, both traditional and social media, has been summarized perfectly by the losing candidate of the mainstream, Crin Antonescu, in an article a few days ago. He argues the country is spiraling out into extremes lacking any nuance or compromise, and the reasonable moderate center, which of course he claims to represent, is being hollowed out. Most observers of the media would probably agree, but from living here and talking to people, I think that's not true. It's just a failed political slogan of the mainstream, which still dominates the traditional media outlets, though probably not for long. My view is that what we have in Romania is just a lively and healthy public debate on some key issues. The problem is that people have just forgotten what that feels like, because the last time we had this was decades ago in the 90s and early 2000s. Of course, in the media, both traditional and online, if it bleeds, it leads. So they have to catastrophize everything to crank up the ratings. But in fact, most people you talk to are actually pretty chill, and there's actually broad consensus on the fundamental issues. First, the times have changed. We've spent the last 35 years just adopting Western institutions, but we're kind of leveling off now. Plus, some of those are crumbling anyway. We need to start to think for ourselves as a nation. What do we want for our kids? And second, the current political mainstream is uniquely incompetent, corrupt, and unfit for guiding even a homeowners association into the future, much less a whole country. These are 2 points that almost nobody denies from any political stripe, so the country is actually quite cohesive and united on the fundamentals, which was not true 10 years ago. In addition, 2 other very important things happened in the last 10 years, which have brought it to where we are. First, we moved from the bottom of the Maslow pyramid to the next level. Romanian spending on international vacations has doubled between 2019, before the pandemic, and 2023 alone, and has continued to increase since then. This means that people's basic needs have been covered and they have extra cash to spend on leisure. Psychologically, this is huge for a country which used to be among the poorest in all of Europe. Politically, what this means is that handouts, like the proverbial kilo of flour with a liter of homemade moonshine in exchange for votes, which used to work like a charm before, not only does not work, it's actually backfiring. People now feel insulted by things which they would be grateful for 10 years ago. They feel they've been manipulated and taken for fools, and now it's payback time. And second, skepticism of authority after COVID. The communist mentality of deferring to authority to handle everything, the paternalistic expectations, used to be very strong, but it broke during COVID. People started to have an almost American-style self-reliance, which is shocking in East Europe, and they started to have what I see as a very healthy distrust of government authority. I grew up partly in the US, and it always seemed so weird how trusting of the government Romanian people were, even when perfectly aware of the radical incompetence and corruption prevailing in the public sector. Well, not anymore. So these 4 things have converged to produce the current political brew. Now, how is this actually being manifested in the current elections? Well, when you want a major change, there are 2 things you have to do. Take down the old stuff and put something new in its place. Thing is, it's not usually the same people who are best at both. Some people are really good at taking down and others are really good at building. Both are needed, but it's never the same person. It's just too cognitively dissonant, I guess. Hindus represent this insight by the gods Shiva the destroyer and Brahma the creator. But you need both. The destroyer actually opens the way for the creator. There would be no room for the creator to create without a destroyer coming first, before, to clear the ground. And in our case, this is exactly what has happened. Democracy is working pretty well. We have two candidates which are both anti-system but complementary with each other. It seems on the surface they try to take each other down, but in fact they complete and support each other. George Simion is the typical destroyer. He's a grassroots protest organizer. He leads the political party AUR, which has become the #1 political force in the country by far, not by proposing any real solutions, but by utterly destroying the traditional mainstream. He's the garbage collector. And the other candidate, Nicu Șordan, is the typical builder. He's patient, competent, and meticulous. Started out also as a grassroots organizer, but in the urbanism and city planning area. He also built up a community and political party, the USR, though he later left it when it was seduced by the destructive Shiva spirit similar to AUR, but on the other side of the political spectrum, the globalist side. So rather than extremes spiraling out of control, I would argue what we're seeing is a kind of circle of life at play here. Simion is opening the way for Dan. Now, whether that will happen this election or the next, and whether Dan will be the builder or someone else, we don't know. It depends on how much inertia the existing mainstream has. If it is still holding on, and some more destruction needs to be done before the building starts, then Simion will win these elections, and we will have a few very politically destructive years before the rebuilding can happen. Or, if the collapse is sufficiently far along, then Dan might win and start rebuilding already. If I were to guess, knowing Romanians, we're never the kind of people to go all the way. We never truly finish anything, as famous rappers Paraziții claim in one of their classics, Dreptul la replică. So I think Simion will probably not be left to finish the job. It's too risky. I think people will play it safe, Romanian style, and go with Dan. Though, who knows, the Romanian political mindset has changed in fundamental ways in the last 10 years. It's hard to predict anything anymore. Either way, we'll find out soon enough.